Hello, today I'm at St Nicholas's Church in Tillingham in Essex, and I'd like to talk to you about the history of the village and the church itself. So Tillingham is a small village located 8 miles from Burnham-on-Crouch. It's 3 miles from Bradwell-on-Sea, and it's set in the middle of the Dengie Peninsula in a rural setting. Now this area goes back to the Neolithic period, and we can say that there were saber-toothed tigers here and porcupines that would be hunted 7,500 years BC. The Danish Vikings were also here, and they called this area Danzig, meaning Danes Island. Now today Tillingham has a population of 1,000. It's 21 metres above sea level, and the name Tilling comes from the Saxon fane Tillung, and ham means hill. It's highly likely that the Roman legionnaires marched through Tillingham en route to Southminster and Burnham-on-Crouch from the settlement at Bradwell-on-Sea, and the main fort also at Arthona. By 654 AD, St Ced had started the construction of St Peter on the Wall Chapel. It's only 4.5 miles away when I looked it up on Google. Or I worked it out, it's about 2 hours on foot. It's possible St Ced himself passed by here at this time. Ethelbert, King of Kent, who owned Tillingham from around 580 AD, gave the village to Mellitus as part of the bishopric of London. Now Mellitus became London's first bishop in 604, and he went on to baptise the King of Essex. It was called Sabert. Alright. Now by 616 both King Ethelbert of Kent and King Sabert of Essex had died. Sabert's sons were pagan, and they drove out Mellitus from England. In 616, Mellitus was to return to become the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the lands of Tillingham now firmly owned by the Church of St Paul's in London. I also found out that it was King Ethelbert of Kent who built St Paul's, and you can see there was a strong connection. There were several manors in Tillingham from the Saxon period. There was Tillingham Hall, there was Packard's Manor, there was Prairie, and there was Tillingham Grange. Now in 1066 and 1086, the canons of St Paul's of London were both tenant-in-chief here, and also lords of the manor. So any revenues went directly to London, and the same I found out happened at nearby Southminster. Now another connection that Tillingham has with Southminster is they both had a lot of sheep. There were 740 here in the Norman period. There were also 15 cattle, 30 pigs. There were a lot of plough teams, which was 14. And we know the population at that time was 20 villagers, 8 smallholders and 4 slaves. There was also a mill here and a fishery. It must have been a very busy village at the time. After the rule, there were 4 manors. They were owned by different families, except for Prairie Manor, which until 1426 was owned by the Deans of St Paul. Tillingham Grange is 2 miles northeast from St Nicholas, and it's set in the marshes, and it was owned by Thomas Cawthon. But in 1553 Thomas was burnt for heresy at the time of Queen Mary I, or Bloody Mary as she was known by the Protestants. In 1652 a Major Gregory Baker, in his last will and testament, left money so that the almshouses may be built in Tillingham parish. Now, Major Gregory Baker was famous for being involved in the siege of Colchester. He also left money to the poor. I'd like to mention Mary Adams. She was a resident of Tillingham in 1652. She actually believed that she was herself the Virgin Mary. She was pregnant at the time and was charged with blasphemy, and poor Mary was imprisoned. But in 1652 there was no such thing as mental health and well-being. And in a documented account it was said, these are the words, at which time the midwife and other good women of the parish came for her. They did their best endeavours to bring her to a faith deliverance, but could not prevail, for that there lay in exceeding great misery and torment for the place for 8 days and nights. And upon the 9th day, about 7 of the clock in the forenoon, and then I won't read you any more, it's just too sad. But she was mentioned as being a good character and a great frequenter of St Nicholas Church. And it just shows how we've come forward in today's society with social care and midwifery. Now we're going to focus on the church itself. So we're going to take a wander over there. Let's cross this road. So you can see that the church itself stands in the middle of the village even today. I must say it's a lovely little village. And as villages go, this is exactly how I would imagine an English village to be. With a further pub up there, and I'll talk about that later. Now the walls of St Nicholas are made of septaria stone and flint rubble, and the dressings, as most churches in Essex, are of limestone. And if you take that road there, which is a lovely little drive in itself, that will take you to Bradwell-on-Sea, which I highly recommend visiting. Now we should start with the West Tower. Just one other thing I'd like to point out, this is a really popular area for walkers. And the St Peter's Walk, which I believe goes from Ongar, or the original part, and it goes all the way to St Peter on the Wall Chapel, which is in that direction, where the walk is. We've got some noisy crows up there. Right, so we're going to cut through this cemetery. So it's a grand affair, this tower here. It's 14th century in construction. The dimensions are 12 foot by 11 foot. And it's built in 3 stages. You can clearly see them there and there. Now on the southeast corner you've got what they call a crenulated stair turret with gargoyles to angles and a weather vane, which I can't see, but you can see the gargoyles on the corners. Now this tower was rebuilt in 1888 after a lightning strike. Now the clock on there, fine piece of craftsmanship. That was built to celebrate Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee of 1887. Let's just have a look on the west side of it. You can see it's been quite renovated. It's got nice clean corners. You can see that. So on this church we've got a south aisle which was added, and this is which is here straight ahead. This is 14th century. I don't know what this is, but you can see some excellent masonry from the original church. Look at that. And again, look at this. This is great stuff. It's nothing new in recycling, nothing new at all. Stone's valuable commodity, any stone. So a lot of this stuff would come out of the fields. You won't get better than that. So this is, I'm walking straight over a headstone there, which I try not to do. It's hard to avoid it in a place like this. But anyway, you can see the headstones are just about everywhere. A lot of churches reuse them in floors. Some remove the headstones from the floors and tile the floors themselves. But you can see the amount of detail that's gone into that roof. It's all clay tiles, all handmade. And again, if you look here, medieval stonework, probably Norman. Fascinating. Now we shall enter this porch. Now, I haven't got so much detail on this church as there was no booklet here and I couldn't find anything online. So we're just going to wing this one. But anyway, you get the gist of what's going on. So you've got the south doorway there. I've got a bit of damp problem there coming through on the pine boards, I guess. It's easy fixed. But as we enter this lovely church, we've got the big south doorway. If I turn around, you get an idea of the view. And what I did find here, this would be part of the south aisle. It's this lovely old font. Let's see if I can. There. Oh, that's it, it's gone off. Again, I didn't get the details of the age, but I guess that would be about 14th century. Don't think it's older than that. You can imagine trying to hump this thing across the threshold. It's got some weight to it. Now this whole area's got a really big connection to St Ced, because obviously he just literally miles from here he set up the first chapel in Essex. Now we're actually standing in the nave. This is the oldest part of the building, so this is the original building. So they would have added this south aisle at the 14th century. So it's most likely there would have been a church here before. Now this nave measures 52.5 feet by 21 feet. As we walked in, that was the original 12th century doorway. Now the arcade here, which we can see in front of us, these columns, these piers, these are 14th century and there's 4 bays. And these were restored in 1708 and 1807. And this whole roof up here is actually quite new. It dates to 1935. You can see where parts, you can see the original base there actually. Just wanted to show you, let's have a look here first. Let's go down the south wall. So as you come into the church, you've got the usual visitors book, which is always good to sign. So please sign that, fill that in if you can, because that shows that people are coming in here. And then you've got various pamphlets and so on, which donations can be given as well, which always helps the church. And quite a nice window there, quite unusual. I guess this would be carried in processions in the front there. Small chapel area. That's for prayers. Very nice Victorian period window. I don't quite know exactly what I'm looking at with everything because I haven't got the paperwork on it, but you get the idea. There's stuff everywhere. Every church has got its own unique history, and it's best to ask somebody connected to it. So you've got various family memorials. We've got the pulpit there. And the screen which separates the chancel from the nave. I don't know how old this is. I think these are called poppy heads. I've seen these before on pews. For some reason I've not got anything on the chancel. But anyway, we can walk through. Zoe, I'll sort of blag my way through this one. There you go, St Ced. I guess he didn't look much like that at the time. Probably a lot more simple, I guess. Was this another St. Sid? Victorian interpretation, I think, but still, it's nice colours. It's best to see it in person. The camera can't catch the true colours. Got a nice organ there. Always fascinated me how anybody can play one of those. So complex. I did notice there is a really nice painting here, which is of this church. You can see the tower there. The poppies. Still affects people today. This is the high altar area, and these would be the altar rails. Some churches don't have these still. This is a sedilia. So I'm learning my stuff now. So this is basically for where the priests would sit, the priest assistant, might be a curate, etc. I believe this is for where the vessels would be washed, and this hole here would go directly to the ground, if I'm not mistaken. Not 100% sure of that. Lots of probably Victorian marble work there. Isaiah and St. Paul. I know that because it says it on the window. Jesus there. It's quite impressive. Look at that, that's fine work, isn't it? That must be Mary with baby Jesus. Fairly big crack in that column there. So anyway, it gives you an idea. Now there's 6 bells here. We've got a William Culverden of 1500, and it's inscribed Sancta Lucia, which I believe is connected to Sancta Lucia. Lucia was the patron saint of blindness. And in northern Italy, even today, on the 12th and 13th of December, children are asked to leave out coffee for Lucia and flour for the donkey. They must not watch Sancta Lucia, or she may temporarily blind them. This tradition stems from the 14th century, when an eye plague attacked the children of Verona in Italy. Now, William Culverden was a master bell founder of the Whitechapel Foundry, as so many of these churches are. We have a Henry Jordan, one of the rarest of the bells. Now, Henry was in the business during the reign of Henry VI from 1442 to 1468. There's a Henry Jordan bell at the church I volunteer at Butsbury. It's very rare. The bell cast in reeds in Latin, Johannes est nomen uis, I think that's pronounced, means John is his name, and I guess that refers to John the Baptist. We've also got a John Darby, 1684. When I looked up 1684, the River Thames had frozen and 2 miles into the North Sea, so it was a really bad winter. We've got a Henry Pleasant bell, 1707, from Sudbury. Now, this foundry was by a river, and Henry died 1 year after this bell was cast. Now we should go outside and have a little wander around. You can see the chancell's been rendered there, maybe in lime. So the churches went for a period of rendering the walls, so they covered up all the rubble there. Personally, I prefer it like this. Oh, there you can see a better view of the, if I go like that, zoom in, you can see a better view of the weather vane and the gargoyles. I think they call this a tabletop tomb. You can see how flat this land is. I mean, look at it in the distance. If we go over a little bit, there are some high points on the Dengie Peninsula actually, but it's more or less flat. So it's ideal for cyclists. It's quite a vast cemetery actually. Now it's an interesting area. I did some research, and World War II troops were billeted here. I mean, not in this church, but somewhere locally. There was a home guard that was formed, and a prisoner of war camp was built at Marsh House, and the bombs fell around here along with a plane crash also at Marsh Farm. Tillingham itself had a fire brigade in 1937. It's a real grand, it's grand in scale, this church, isn't it? When you think how big the village is, what did I say, 1,000 people? So you can see how the importance of it in the medieval period. Now this is what I'm talking about. Actually, I saw one of these stones in the south wall. Or was it the porch? You can see. So if this is the oldest side, I believe, well, the oldest part is the nave, and that was 12th century. It's a good chance this is original. Just looking, sometimes you get some good graffiti. Right, onwards and onwards. It's a vast scale. I don't know what that is, it's been blocked up. Noisy crows. So some of these cottages, I'm not sure which ones, but some of the cottages in the village here were built by the Dean of Chapter of St Paul's in 1881. And St Paul's Cathedral have owned land here since King Ethelbert, and it's actually in the Guinness Book of Records, or World Records. So it's quite unique. Let me go up the other end, and then you've got the sun behind us. So it could possibly be these fine cottages here. I've got a feeling it's probably, yeah, I would have guessed it'd be these cottages here that would be owned by, would have been built by the Dean of St Paul's. Now if you look at that fine pub over there, camera's having a heart attack. So this is the Fox and Hounds pub. It was ran originally by the Thurgood family. It's an early 19th century pub. It's now owned by, let me see on my paperwork. Yeah, the brewery company, Grays and Sons, and when I looked them up, they own 52 pubs in Essex, including 3 pubs in my hometown of Billericay. You never get far away from a pub in Essex. Looks a very good pub, that one. Now the landlord, Peter Fenn, received a long service award for 20 years in 2019. And we've got the village sign, which is quite common here. All villages have their little signs put up. This one's quite nice. You can see, if you look on that, you can see the connection with St Paul's Cathedral. So the top part is St Paul's, the dome of St Paul's Cathedral, and you can see the connection with the wildfowl and the farming community here. Now in the distance, there's quite a lot going on here actually. In these small villages, you'd be surprised. Now, the Cap and Feathers, which is straight ahead. If I zoom in on that, this building there. So it's the main 2 pubs here, I guess. That was built on a Pilgrim's Lodge. It's a really serious old date to it. And it's been dated to around 1420. And it was once called the King's Head, but it changed its name in the English Civil War. Now I also found out that Tillingham Hotspur Football Club, formed in 1903, used the pub as a changing room, and in the 1970s former England player Neil Franklin, he took over as landlord. So a proper football pub. Now this square, so if you look at the square as it is now, it's actually got a cross. If you look, it's got a cross, an unusual cross-section road there. It's been the centre of village life probably before the Saxon times. During the 20th century, according to local agricultural worker Mr. Kemp, it was used for bicycle races, a twice-yearly fair, cricket matches, and still today, Tillingham Square is used for public gatherings and live music. It was a lot bigger than this. It was once 1 acre in size, so that's about 4,000 odd square metres. Now, water was collected. Cross over here. Water was collected from a pump, and there used to be fights would break out. And I did read somewhere that there was prize fighting here. So that was like illegal bare knuckle fighting, I guess. So it still goes on today. And the petition was out by the locals, and it saw the closure of the Cock Inn. Also here was Peddlers' Fairs. And then there was a celebration of Silver Jubilee, and for Queen Elizabeth II coronation. And I dare suspect the coronation, the Diamond Jubilee for Her Majesty the Queen. I also read that on a cold winter's day, or one cold winter shall we say, the square was home for geese, which flew in from the North Sea. As you can see, we're very close to the coastline here in the North Sea. It's literally miles away. Now this red phone box has got a little, I found it a really quaint story actually. In 2004 it was struck by a car, so it's a car crash, and then this box was removed. A local band called Maze recorded a song called Tillingham Phone Box Blues, which you can look up on YouTube. Now, so the phone box has been removed, the band's made this song. The parish council raised the issue. It was stated the phone box was actually listed, so it's protected basically, and the phone company agreed to replace it, but with a new style one, a modern type. Nobody really wanted it. I really like these stories, especially when people from the community get involved to keep the village exactly as it is. So today, St Nicholas Church, it's still carrying out baptisms, weddings and funerals, and it's Church of England. And I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.